We're going to continue our sermon series in the Sermon on the Mount now as we continue with Matthew chapter 6 verses 1 to 4. We're like many churches, the financial giving doesn't come from some big denomination. It comes from people's pockets in the church family. And I read of a church recently, and they have a list in their welcome area. And the list is a list of names of church members who don't give money to the church. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I read it. How awful is that? I'm fortunate. I don't know who gives what in this church, and I always want it to be that way so that there's no imbalance in relationship. But can you imagine being part of that church, and every week you walk in and your name is on the list, or your name's not on the list and you want people to know about it. I heard of a church that was a large church, and they said if you give over a certain amount of money to our church each year, then you get the senior minister to do your wedding or your funeral. But if you don't give over that certain amount, you get one of the others. What? We've got baptismal services coming up this Easter Sunday, morning and evening. We've got 2 people being baptised so far in the morning. We've got a 10-year-old young lady, and we've got a lady who's about my age who's being baptised. And I always wonder, should we be baptised with our purse, our wallet, or nowadays it's just your bank card, probably not your phone, that you've got your wallet on. But should we be baptised with those? Because money seems to be one of the things that many of us struggle with when it comes to walking the Jesus walk. Starts the passage, he says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven." Righteousness here isn't self-righteousness, it's piety, it's justice. When you do your justice, do it so that it's not seen by others. Otherwise, you'll get no reward from God. Reward is mentioned 3 times in this passage. It's our payback. It's what God gives us in life and in eternity. There's a Jewish rabbi teaching book about ethical standards called Avot that was written after the Old Testament. And in it they say, be not like servants who serve their master for the sake of receiving a reward. And the Jewish scholar Amy Jill Levine says, "We do not need and should not even desire public recognition. Nothing could be greater, of more value, than God responding, 'Well done.'" I like a bit of recognition, don't you? Maybe you're one of those people who's more introspective and more private. Maybe you're not like me and Sally Allen, our associate minister. We often joke that we're quite similar, and is that actually healthy for the church? Because we like being out there, and we like being at the front. And so you have to monitor it carefully. We can either be rewarded by people or by God. That's what Jesus is saying. It's really up to you. Do it for show, and you get the pat on the back from your fellow man, your fellow woman. Do it not looking for recognition, and we get reward from God. We don't give to get the reward, though. We give because we're made in God's image, and God is generous. We don't give to get a reward. There are no perks for being a church member. I remember at my last church that when I went there, they said, if you want a family party or children's party at this church, if you're a church member, then you don't have to pay. But if you're from the community, you have to pay. And I said to the deacons meeting, is that the way Jesus would do it? Is that the way round if he was in our deacons meeting now? Or do you think he would say, if you're a church member, why don't you finance the parties for the children of the families that can't afford it in your community? So in the end, we said, no one has to pay. If you want to give a gift, you can. There's no perks to being part of the church. There's no reward for long service. The reward is from God, a well done. Jesus carries on and says, "So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full." Jesus, at this part of the sermon, calls us to reflect on how we live our lives. The word you there is singular. Jesus is talking to you. Jesus is talking to me. He's aiming the ethical arrow of his eye, as it were, at you, at me. How will you give to the needy? This isn't to the crowd now listening around where we can say, oh no, this is for Jeff or this is for Tina. This is for you. This is for me. And Jesus challenges us in what we do with our money. Money is the fourth thing Jesus talks about most in the Gospels. He talks most about the kingdom of God, then he talks about God as our Father, then he talks about faith, and then he talks about money. Money comes up again and again and again because it was the issue back then that it is today. I was reading a biography of someone last night and I thought, I'll just look up online and see what their net worth is. Why did I do that? Why was it important to me that they are worth $25 million? When I'm never going to meet them, they're never going to give me any money, I'm never going to get anything out of it. But when you type in a person's name on Google, net worth comes up as one of the first things that you can look at because we value people by how much they're worth. It's daft. In fact, more than that, it's wrong. It's not the way Jesus measures. Jesus says, give to the needy. There will always be poor people in the land, it says in the Old Testament. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land. For Jews, giving to those who are in need was central to their commandments and the way they lived. And it should be central to us as Christians as well, that we give to those who are in need. Somebody gives us an anonymous gift each year as a church for the last 3 years to be used at Tonbridge Angels Football Club, where I'm the chaplain. And that chunk of money is given, it's given to us. And the chairman, who you see there, the tiny man, we've got the smallest chairman in the league, and we've got a lovely song about him, which he really enjoys. And he sat down with me and he said, look, your church has given me this chunk of money for the club, so what do you want back? There's all these packages that we can give you to benefit the church. I said, no, Dave, that's his name. I wouldn't have called him it otherwise. I said, Dave, we don't want anything for the church. We want all of the things that you want to gift us to go to the local community. He went, pardon? He said, but I can give you this. No. I said, if you can give us 2 places on each soccer camp in each school holiday so that 2 young people from Longmead can go to those who couldn't afford £84 for that week, that would be brilliant. They came out and said, we'll give you 8 places every time. So there's 8 children every time down there that you, through someone who gave to us, have helped go down there. No one knows who they are when they go down there. They're not the freebie kids. They're just down there learning to play football, socialising, getting some health, getting some food in the holidays because of you. And you didn't even know you did that, did you? That's how generous you are. He said, I don't know what to do with you. I've never had any benefactor like this in the history of the club who doesn't want something in return. And he'll be waddling up here tomorrow morning with food that they collected at yesterday's game for our food bank because they want to give back to us as we give to them. When we had the last crisis, he said to me straight away, Neil, what are the church doing? Because we do what you do because you're good at this stuff. So tell us how you're responding to this crisis as a church, and then we can jump on the back of that. That's you, being generous without even knowing we're doing it. Jesus says, don't be like the hypocrites who put on a show. And when I said about Sally, I apologise, Sally, you're not like me at all. You're lovely, and Gareth is lovely as well. But I am like that, and it's something I have to work with. Jesus would have known about hypocrites because hypocrite in Greek meant actor. And in Sepphoris, where Jesus' grandparents lived, he would have gone and stayed with them, and he probably would have gone to the theatre, which the ruins of are still there, you can see in that picture. And that's where Jesus maybe learned some of his acting skills and his storytelling skills as he sat and he watched these actors. But the word actor in Greek morphed into hypocrite by the time Jesus was an adult. It was someone who did things for show and for public praise, for someone who was deceitful. Jesus says, don't be deceitful. Don't put on a show. The rabbis at Jesus' time said that these hypocrites, they said it was liars, scoffers, slanderers, gossipers. They won't bask in God's glory because of how they act. God still loves them, God's still there, but they won't sense God's presence because they're always making it about themselves. Don't you feel like that when you've had a sinful day and you lay down in bed at night and you think, I feel a bit grotty? And you feel a bit grotty if you're like me because you're just not basked in God's presence. It's all been about me and what I want to do and what I hope to get out of it. Jesus calls the Pharisees, the religious leaders, hypocrites. People like me, ministers, vicars, leaders of churches. You are actors. You are scoffers, liars, slanderers. You put it on for show to get reward from others. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Give in secret. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. This Christian life is difficult, isn't it? It's almost contradictory. It's a balancing act. Because just one chapter earlier, Jesus says, you are a light on a hill. Don't hide it. Let it shine. Let everyone see how good you are. Oh, but when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Jesus, what? Hang on a minute. What do I do? Do I do it on the quiet? Or do I Shazam? Help me out here, Jesus. Jesus is saying, as a Christian community, you should be visible. You should be a light that shines in your community, in your workspaces, at the school gates, in your retirement home, with your family who don't know Jesus yet. You should shine. But when it comes to your financial giving and your service of others, do it on the quiet. Do it in private. Dallas Willard says, the teaching is not that we should hide our good deeds. That might be appropriate in some cases, but it is not Jesus' point. I think what Jesus' point is this. Don't do a good deed in order to be seen. But if you do a good deed and it's seen, that's just life. Because God knows our heart. So if we're doing it to be seen, we won't get that reward from God. But if we're doing it and it happens to be seen, that's okay. At our first church, we had an elder who was a town councillor, and we came back from holiday a day early, and he went, oh no! And he was at our house mowing our front lawn, because it had grown for 2 weeks. He went, you've caught me. I wanted to do it without you knowing. That's fine, Jesus says, because he's not doing it going, look at me, I'm a town councillor, I am mowing the lawn of the vicar. How humble am I? He was trying to do it and not get caught. God will reward you when you give in this way, Jesus says. We find it tough to receive reward, don't we? To receive compliments, to receive praise. Especially as Christians, we like to say, oh no, it's okay. It's really crushing when someone gives you a compliment and you say, oh no, no thank you. So then we end up with a culture where we don't encourage each other at all. I heard of a lady who was playing the violin at church, and at the end of it, a man went up to her and said, your violin playing was absolutely brilliant. He said, oh, thank you, it wasn't me, it was the Lord. And he said, no, it wasn't that good. As I was going through this morning, I remembered a wedding I went to when I was at Bible college. One of my Bible college friends was there. He leads orchestras in London now. He's not a minister. He does a fantastic job with that. And he played the violin brilliantly. And we had a violin solo in this wedding. And I wasn't sure if it was good or not. And I said to him, what was that violin like? And he went, it was brown. It's his way of sidestepping, saying something nasty. It was the colour brown, but the playing was awful. When I was a teenager here, a lady called Chris Blundell, who loved me, looked after me, prayed for me, journeyed with me and still does, said to me, if you're going to be a minister, you need to learn to accept praise. She said, so when someone compliments you, just nod your head and say thank you. And when you're nodding your head, you're imagining that the cross of Jesus is behind you. And so you're taking the praise and the encouragement, but you're also letting it going over to where it belongs, to Jesus. I've kept that in my mind for 35 years because it's so helpful. Thank you. Thanks for seeing what I did. Really appreciate that. Try it. So this can increasingly become a cultural place of encouragement. We had a staff team meeting the other week and we just had our youth weekend away. And we always feedback and give encouragements. And I said, Ryan, how did the youth weekend away go? And he went, yeah, we planned it and it went exactly as we'd hoped it would go. And someone went, ooh. He said, oh, sorry, I forgot I'm in a culture where we can't just say that went well. But he's Scottish, so he's not been Englishified yet to the point where everything has to be bad. He's still got a bit of freedom in him. And I came out of that meeting thinking, yeah, why are we like that as human beings? Why can't we encourage each other when we do see things that we've done not to get reward before God? Well done, that was great. Absolutely fantastic. There's a Jewish teacher from the 12th century who talks about 8 levels of giving that we have. Where do you sit on this when it comes to your money, your time, your thoughts? He said the lowest level of giving is that we give unwillingly. You know that when someone's shaking a bucket by the train station, you think that will shut them up. Then there's giving willingly but inadequately. We're happy with the lesser amount, but we could give more. We know we could give more, but we're not going to. And then there's giving only after we've been asked. When I was at Bessells Green at the church there, I worked out it would cost me about £800 to come over for a year to do football chaplaincy at Tonbridge Angels. And we didn't have £800 that I could use, and I didn't feel I could give it to the church. So I said to my wife, Jo, I'm going to phone Graham. He's a guy in the church, supported Charlton Athletic, really nice guy, looked like Columbo. And I said, I'm going to phone him and ask him for £800. She said, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can. She said, no, you can't. I am. I went, hi, Graham. He went, all right. I said, Graham, I need £800 because I'm going 2 or 3 times a week over there. It's 22 miles for petrol money. You love football. You love God. Do you want to give it to me? He went, yeah, that's fine. I thought, why didn't I ask for 1,500? We give before the request comes in is the next level of giving. One Jewish family have a pushka box. And the pushka box is a box by the door where you put all your loose change. And then when the pushka box is full, you take it to the rabbi at the synagogue and you give it to him and say, just use this for whatever. So he's not expecting it to come, but it's there. How much change have you got at home that maybe you've got just on the side? I've got it in a shell by my bedside table, all this coinage, that we could just say, why don't we put that in a box? And then we take it to TBC and we just give it in and say, just use that for whatever it needs to be used for. I love it that we have an emergency fund here at TBC of £2,000 so that whenever there is any international disaster, immediately £2,000 goes out to that and makes an immediate difference. And then we refill it and people give money back. How much did we get, Ali, for the last one when we refilled it, putting you on the spot as our finance person? £5,000 or £6,000. So then all of that over the £2,000 immediately goes out to that place. I'd never heard of that before. I think it's brilliant that you do that here to make a difference. The next level of giving is giving anonymously, but the receiver knows the identity. So no one else knows apart from the person who receives it. And then the next level is give so that the giver knows the receiver, but not vice versa. So I give to you, Joe, but you don't know it comes from me, so it goes via somebody else. And then the level that Jesus is talking about here, giver and receiver don't know each other at all, but the money is given. And then this Jewish teacher gives another level above that. He says the giver enters into a partnership with the receiver to help them become financially secure, so they're not having to keep coming back time and time again. And that's where we're wanting to move to here as a church with our food bank Sustain. Because we give out over 80 food parcels a week to people in this community. And we want to see that number drop. Not because people don't feel they can come, but because we want to be in a place where people are actually saying, I don't need to come anymore. We had one man in the pandemic, his life fell apart, his marriage split up, he had to move into a small flat on his own, he lost his job. He came in here in tears, a grown man, and said, I never thought I'd be in the place where I have to ask for food. I am ashamed. He said, that's fine, we'll support you. Supported him, then didn't see him. 6 months later, he came in with a food bag and said, I'm on my feet again, and I want to make a difference. That's where we want the giving to get to. Rob Blundell has been our church treasurer and involved in the finance for about 20 years. And he always says to me these words, and it's going to be on his headstone, and he's got a massive head, as you can see there. I said to him, it's going to be on your tombstone. He went, no, on my headstone. Do you know, they didn't have a big enough Boys Brigade hat for him when he was a lad. That's how large his head is. I'm not exaggerating. They're like, next, no. Okay, we're so two together. He always says to me, Neil, giving is a sacrificial act of worship. It's not direct debit, can't remember how much is in there because we did it 20 years ago. It's not what change have I got on me. It's part of who I am as a Christian. A couple of comments about giving. Firstly, we're all poor and in need in some way. All of us. We might be needy financially, might be physically, might be emotionally, might be mentally, might be spiritually, it might be timely. We're poor and in need. So if we're sitting here or at home and we're thinking, actually, financially, I am needy, I'm the biggest loser in the room, you're not. Because all of us are poor in some way at some point in life. All of us need one another. Giving should preserve dignity. Dignity of the person who is giving. If they want it to be anonymous, then we keep it quiet. And the person who receives, not, oh, there, have that, but done in a way that lifts, that encourages, that gives hope. And the person who's generous today may be in need tomorrow. How many of us have been sailing along in life, clear blue skies, our plans all out, and then boom, something happens, and we go from being the person who was generous to the person who's in need, like that. And we all have something to give. Money, time, activity, prayers. And I end with prayers because it's so important. I've got 6 people in this church who pray for me every Monday. I send them an email and they pray. I need it. I want it. I'm desperate for it because I know who I am. We can all give something. There's a young man, doesn't come to the church on a Sunday. He comes in here every Friday after open house, our coffee shop for the community, and he puts all the chairs away because the people that help there aren't strong enough necessarily to do all of that lifting. Every Friday he comes in, and none of you, apart from me and a couple of other people, know he does it. Went up to him the other Monday after playing football, and I went, so-and-so, thank you so much for what you do on it every Friday. It is brilliant. He went, okay, thanks. It's just I was asked and I thought I could do it. Giving without others knowing. Joe and I took our youngest boy, Amos, he's 10, to a piano person. And he was seeing how good Amos is at the piano. And he played a bit for him. And the guy said, that's good. He said, but what are you doing that you shouldn't do? And Amos went, That's all he did, really. And the guy said to him, he said, you're looking at your hands on the piano keyboard, aren't you? And you're not looking at the music. He said, because you've learnt most of the music, and then you get to a point where you've forgotten the music, and you look up at the music, and you've lost your way, and that's when you slow down on the piano, and you don't do it. He said, what you need to do is look at the music, because your hands know what they're doing. Oh. And so he said, play it again. So Amos played it again and started by looking down. And the teacher did this genius thing where he put a piece of white paper over Amos's hands so that he couldn't see them. And Amos immediately panicked and then looked at his music. And he could play looking at the music without looking at his hands. He didn't need to know what his hands were doing because he was looking in the place he should have done. And he played it so much better. When we give, let's not look at what our right and our left hands are doing on the keyboard of life, but let's look at the music, Jesus. If we do that, I don't think we'll go far wrong when it comes to money.